It's interesting with John McDonnell, our correspondent in Canberra for Flow News 24. He said that Matthias Cormann was the frontrunner for the OECD chairman, and over the weekend it emerged that the former finance minister has won the race. It's good news for Canberra and I would think for Australia. But by the same token, in Canberra, the coalition down in the polls, although Mr Morrison remains preferred PM. John writes for us, though, that there'll be women who will be marching on Canberra and a torrid week ahead, with Defence Minister Linda Reynolds, the Attorney-General Christian Porter, both on sick leave. Greg Hunt is been in hospital. He's got infectious cellulitis. Prime Minister needs to get on the front foot at the moment. Labor leader Anthony Albanese is pretty good about the way in which the McGowan government has won in Western Australia, and he'd be pretty cock-a-hoot about it, says John. And he writes that Labor believe that the groundswell of voter interest from women against the government could be the very thing that swamps the Prime Minister. There's going to be a Women's Justice March scheduled for today, a political turning point that could destabilise the government. This may not be true. Women may not actually be as anti-government as the opposition may think. The Australian Institute's conducted a poll of 1,000 voters last week to find out the level of support for an independent inquiry into Porter's allegations. 54% of respondents favoured an inquiry and a large number were undecided. The interesting thing was that many more men than women thought an inquiry was a good idea. So it's an interesting one there. Women are already criticising the Kate Jenkins review into the culture in Parliament House, although the terms of reference and procedures were determined by Ms Jenkins after discussions with women in the House and the opposition. They are being criticised on the basis that they will discourage women from testifying. There has also been a suggestion, John writes, that the Solicitor General should be asked for an opinion on the allegations against Christian Porter. However, when Shadow Attorney General Mark Dreyfus was asked on RN Breakfast whether he would accept an opinion that favoured Porter, he declined to answer. If the government makes concessions, its opponents will shift the goalposts, says John. And he goes on to say that there are three ways that the government can get on the front foot. That is, dominate the legislative agenda, push back over Christian Porter, and finally threaten to call an election. The industrial relations legislation is due to return to the Senate this week. Some crossbenchers have said that they will refuse to negotiate on it until the future of the Industrial Relations Minister Porter is resolved. The government should put a bill up and tell the crossbench that if they vote against it, they'll treat it as a failure to pass. And John then says it could be then re-presented. And of course, and that could be a stalemate situation. As far as inquiries go, the Prime Minister should emphasise that the SA Coroner is the appropriate investigatory agency for the moment. In the event that there is a coronial inquest, it would be imprudent for an administrative inquiry set up by the government into the Christian Porter circumstance. The Acting Attorney General is the appropriate person to request an opinion from the Solicitor General, and the Solicitor General's opinion should advise on the constitutionality of an inquiry, says John, who has a vast amount of legal experience in commenting on political issues. The as yet unrevealed evidence by the complainant's former boyfriend would probably not be relevant to this opinion, but could be part of the coronial inquiry, so it should be provided to the South Australian Police, says John. Whatever happens, Christian Porter will have to remain in Parliament. His seat is about to be abolished by the Electoral Commission. If he quits, the government will be another member down because a by-election can't be held as the seat won't exist at the next full election. Peter Dutton would then take over as Leader of the House, and he will be a tougher proposition than Porter has been. The government should use this to ensure that Labor cannot make ground in the current sittings, and this likely to engender a furious response from the opposition in the next 2 weeks. And this can become increasingly acrimonious, which is what we think is going to be the case. The government needs to get to the April long break and then come back with a strong program for the budget session, is John's conclusion today. Yes, there is a very torrid week facing Scott Morrison. He's had some torrid weeks in recent times, and I think when one considers that the vaccine being rolled out and the factor of Morrison having his second shot and trying to put photographs out on the weekend to defer the attention off of what was a terrible loss for the Liberal Party in Western Australia, one can suggest that it's going to be a torrid few weeks, maybe months, for the Morrison government. we'll get more on that WA election when Ricky Lambert joins us in the next hour.